In this video, I will show you a gambit that will help you win many games. The best part is that you will be able to play this gambit frequently because for us to play this gambit, the opponent will need to choose the Italian game in the opening, and the Italian game is a very common opening. There are 10 moves for black against the Italian opening, and carefully observe the winning rates for each. The Russo gambit, on the other hand, is not very common, which will give us an advantage. We will now analyze how to play against the most popular moves made against this gambit, one by one. Now we advance our central pawn and launch an attack with the knight, leaving no escape for the opponent's knight except to retreat.
Wait a minute.
Who the heck are you?
I am the White Queen. Knight, don't listen to this fool, you're not going anywhere.
We move the queen to e7 to remove the pin and sending the horse packing to the barn. Now, we advance our knight to f6 square to develop.
I'm not happy with this situation. Pawn to d3, advancing and attacking that annoying pawn.
Can you stop interrupting the video?
Alright, but you have to defeat me first.
Let's attack the queen and threaten a fork by playing knight to g4.
I'm not a beginner to fall for cheap tricks.
Now, let's capture the pawn on c2 with the knight.
If you continue to watch this guy, you'll only lose ELO, hahaha.
Now, we take the pawn and win the queen.
This is impossible, I can't believe it. Subscribe to this guy and become a better player.
Finally, we got rid of the annoying queen. Let's go back to the main line. After the horse returns to its barn, we first develop our knight and eliminate the threat of queen h5. In this position, the opponent often plays d3. We gain a tempo by attacking the bishop instead of capturing the pawn. Here the opponent usually prefers to pin our knight. Now, we take the opponent's pawn with our bishop and we are in a much better position. Looking at the position overall, the opponent has only developed one piece, while we have developed many of our pieces. Shortly, here is the continuation I'd like to show. When the opponent captures the pawn, we capture it with our knight. The opponent will want to develop their knight and castle, and we develop our bishop. After both sides castle, the opponent may further develop their other knight. Here, we can capture the pawn with our knight. Generally, this exchange may not be favorable, but in this position, it works out better for us. After the trade, we sacrifice our knight. If the opponent captures our knight, we capture the pawn with our bishop, winning the opponent's queen, and obtaining a highly advantageous position. Now, let's analyze the second most commonly played move against our gambit. Although the win rate has dropped in this variant, but we will still beat the opponent easily with the moves the opponent plays the most. Here, we develop our bishop and lure the opponent into our trap. The opponent attempts to fork us by playing e5. We advance our pawn, blocking the defense of the opponent's bishop. The opponent forks us. We develop our queen to h4, aiming for checkmate. In this position black has a much better chance of winning than white, but there is a move that challenges us, so let's move on from the main variant before analyzing that move. The opponent castles. We develop our knight on f6. The opponent captures our rook. We play knight to g4, posing numerous threats, but the opponent has only one move to prevent checkmate. Now, we capture the pawn with the knight, creating a discovered check threat. The opponent is forced to capture, let's say they don't. Let's briefly look at those variations. Double check, king has to move, discovered check, king can escape only one square and checkmate. Let's quickly look at the move qf3. We capture the pawn with our knight again, resulting in a double check, forcing the opponent to move the king. This time, we play the knight to g5, and after capturing the queen, we swiftly win the game. Let's go back and look at the variation where the opponent captures our knight with their rook. Now, we capture the rook with the queen. When the opponent's king moves, we advance our pawn, aiming to deliver checkmate. The opponent cannot capture our pawn with the queen here. They must capture with the pawn. Now comes a brilliant move, playing e5, attacking both the opponent's bishop and pawn. When the opponent captures our pawn with their bishop, we capture the pawn. In this position, the opponent has no chance to escape checkmate. Let's take a look at the variant with a low win rate. In this position, instead of capturing the pawn, we are moving our queen to h3. the opponent usually captures our rook. Now, we play d5 to open up our bishop and at the same time, attack the opponent's bishop. When the opponent captures the pawn with their bishop, we attack their queen. In this position, the opponent typically plays f3 and attacks our bishop. Although other moves are possible, this position is generally advantageous for us. Here, we play aggressively by sacrificing the bishop, capturing the pawn, allowing the opponent to capture our bishop for free, and advancing our pawn. The opponent has nowhere to save the rook, and after a few moves, we'll promote our pawn to a queen, leaving the opponent with no options. We'll first look at a variation where the opponent develops their knight before d4, attacking the center against the Russo Gambit. In the variation where the opponent develops their knight, there's a very nice trap, and the opponent often falls into this trap. We capture the opponent's pawn in the center, and the opponent most likely recaptures with the knight, falling into a fork. The reason for this is that even though the Italian game is played very frequently, the opponent often lacks knowledge on how to play against the Russo Gambit. Now, let's examine the opponent's best move. Here, we capture the e4 pawn. The opponent usually prefers these two moves at this point. Let's analyze them in order. By the way, in these variations, black maintains a better position. To prevent the opponent from playing qh5, we first develop our knight. They usually capture our pawn with their knight. We attack the opponent's bishop by playing e4, and at the same time, if the opponent captures with their pawn, their knight is not protected anymore. After the exchanges, we will castle. The opponent might check our king by capturing our pawn with their pawn, but it's not a concern for the safety of our king. In this position, we focus on the attack, and the opponent finds themselves in a difficult situation. If the opponent captures the f-pawn, play d5 to attack their bishop. Later, you can develop your knight or capture their pawn with your bishop. We can continue the game with a fairly equal position. The most advantageous position for the opponent is the variation where he finds the move e5 after playing d4, but these moves are quite difficult to find. If you've watched this far, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe.